So today's readings invite us to reflect on the themes of faith, healing, and the transformative power of encountering Jesus. So as we gather on this Sunday, we are reminded of the profound impact that Jesus has on our lives, especially in our moments of vulnerability and need. So in the first reading from the book of Jeremiah, we hear God's promise of restoration and hope. The Israelites who have suffered exile and despair are reassured that God will gather them, heal their wounds, and lead them back to safety. This imagery hopefully speaks to us today, as we too may find ourselves in moments of despair or feeling lost in our own lives. See, God's desire to restore is not just for the Israelites of old. It is a promise that echoes through time, reaching each one of us. And now moving to the gospel reading from Mark, we encounter Bartimaeus, a blind man sitting by the roadside begging. Now his cry for help, "Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me." Now, it's not merely a plea for physical healing, but a profound expression of faith. In this plea, Bartimaeus recognizes Jesus for who he truly is. The Messiah, the one who has the authority to heal and transform lives. And despite the crowd's attempts to silence him, Bartimaeus persists, demonstrating a tenacity of faith that draws Jesus' attention. Now here we find an opportunity to reflect on our own lives. How often do we allow the distractions of the world or the voices of others to drown out our cries for help? In our sometimes chaotic and busy lives, it can be easy to overlook our need for Jesus. Bartimaeus teaches us that our faith should be bold and persistent, that we should be unafraid to call out to Jesus in our moment of need. And now when Jesus calls Bartimaeus, he asks the most interesting question to me. I love this question. What do you want me to do for you? I always chuckle when I hear this, when I get to this particular scene. It's like, first instinct is like, Jesus, what do you think he wants? Can't you see he's blind? What do you think? But, and this is why Jesus is Jesus and I'm not. He doesn't presume. So often we encounter people and they may have a need that we see may be apparent, but that's not what they need our help for. And we can go in and make so many assumptions that can be insulting. You know? And there may be an even deeper need that that person has for encountering me and them in our humanness together that I don't necessarily see at that moment. And so here Jesus says, don't presume what their need is. Ask. And this question, again, while seemingly straightforward, invites deep introspection. And it's a question that we must each answer in our own lives. What do we truly desire from Jesus? Are we really willing to be honest about our needs, our wounds, our fears? See, Bartimaeus responds simply, Rabbi, I want to see. And his request goes beyond physical sight. It represents a deeper longing for spiritual clarity and understanding. In our own spiritual journey, we must also seek sight. Sight to see others, to see ourselves clearly, to see others with compassion, and to perceive God's presence in our lives. Now, how can we ask for this sight? Go through prayer. Actually giving God the time, right? Not just like, a quick flyby. Like, Lord, let me be intentional with my time of conversation with you, of just sitting with you and prioritizing it. Let me give you this time of prayer. Through the sacraments and through the community of faith that supports us. And as Bartimaeus is healed, it's not just an end to his blindness. It marks the beginning of a new life. See, the gospel tells us that he followed Jesus on the way. This is significant. See, when we encounter Jesus and receive his healing, we are called to respond by following him. Right? To live out our faith actively and to share the grace we have received with others. It's not like some, transaction we get at a big box store. We grab this thing, we pay for the thing, and we bring it home, and then we put it on a shelf with all the other stuff. This is a gift of deep, profound transformation in our own lives, and it's something to be shared. Right? See, we live in a world today, and again, I encounter this all the time, just people living unhappy lives, unsettled lives, and just seeking meaning. I think more than anything, people just want meaning, right? And when we encounter Christ, he gives us our meaning. He gives us our rudder, our purpose. He helps us to see as he does. And so in our world today, we're called to be bearers of light to those who are in darkness. See, there are many who feel lost, marginalized, or in need of healing. And as followers of Christ, we're invited to be instruments of his love and compassion, to advocate for those who are voiceless and to reach out to those who are suffering. The basis of evangelization is not going around and just, it's like, oh, you're wrong, let me tell you how I'm right. It's simply sharing your story. I can only imagine in this case, Bartimaeus, he followed him on the way. How often the Lord was able to use this man's story of healing, of transformation, to invite others to cry out to Jesus for healing as well. Well, you look at the story of Paul. That's all he ever did. This is who I was. This is who I am now. And it's all because of Christ's transforming, healing power. And this is a man, Paul, he had to spend the rest of his life with the reputation that people were murdered on his say-so. Christians were persecuted and died because of his say-so. And now he's going off to preach the same gospel he once persecuted. This is who I was, but this is who I am now. And it's because Christ encountered me, healed me, gave me purpose and meaning, direction and hope. And now I can't go back. No matter sometimes I feel this tension, these temptations, I know I can't go back. That's evangelization. And the Lord wants to use your story as well. So as we move forward in Mass, let's take a moment to reflect on our own cries for help. What are the areas in our lives where we need God's healing touch? Let's put our egos and pride aside. I don't care how young or old we are. In all of us, there's a child. And that's how the Lord wants us to approach him, as a child. One who understands where we find the source, the fulfillment of our needs. It's like a little child who's like, I can't feed myself. I can't. I'm distraught. I'm crying. And all I'm saying is like, Mommy, Daddy, right? In some ways, that's that place of humility God wants us to approach him. To remember that we are always in need. There are things we can't do for ourselves. And if we're honest with ourselves, there's always something in us that's just, we're experiencing that we just want. Remember that moment when you were a child yourself, in this moment where you're just, sometimes the solution to it is just being held by mom or dad and just say, it's going to be okay. And they'll just solve the problems in the world. What are the areas in our lives where we need God's healing touch? To allow him to cradle us in his arms, to tell us it's going to be okay. And let us not be afraid to voice those needs, both in our hearts and in our prayers. And let us also be mindful of the call to follow Jesus. How can we actively live our faith in our daily lives? This doesn't need to be huge. It's just in the very minutia of the everyday, right? A little bit of time and attention devoted to it. How can we be more attentive to the needs of those around us? And again, it doesn't have to be huge, extravagant things. Do I pay attention to the people around us and the way people move? Do I open the door for the person behind me? Do I acknowledge that person across from me as I'm going through the checkout line, that they're just that there's something different between them and the machine that they're putting the money in? They're a person with a name and a story, and I'm being invited to encounter them and they me. Right? So as we approach the altar today, let us bring our prayers and our intentions, trusting that God hears our cries and desires to heal us. May we be open to the ways in which he calls us to be his hands and feet in the world, following him on the way of love and service. I'm reminded of the words of St. Teresa of Avila this morning. Prayer is an act of love. And so may our prayers today be filled with love and faith, and may we, like Bartimaeus, see with the eyes of our hearts the incredible love that God has for each one of us.